Hello, and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, the podcast dedicated to addressing men's mental health issues and providing practical solutions. My journey has been profoundly shaped by the tragic loss of my son, and through this experience, I've gained valuable insights. I'm here to share what I've learned and continue to discover along the way. If you find this podcast helpful, please like, share, subscribe, and follow us wherever you're listening. Following us and your 5-star rating can make a significant difference in spreading our message and potentially changing someone's life. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcast under Guys Dealings with Feelings, and on YouTube and Instagram at ITU Thrive. That's I, the number 2, the letter U, and the word thrive. I'm so happy and grateful to have Jack Daly on with me today. Jack is an author and retired U.S. naval officer. In an attempt to help with the pandemic of veteran suicides, Jack found a proven tool that worked every time he needed it: laughter. Thus, the writing of Laughing Out Loud. I'm looking forward to learning more about Jack's philosophies. Thanks for being here, Jack.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So just kind of give us an idea about you. Can you tell us how you got to this moment in your journey?
It was a circuitous path, I guess is the best way to put it. When I was on active duty, in April of 1997, I was working for the Office of Naval Intelligence. I was a naval intelligence officer, and they gave me what I believe to be a sweetheart deal when they assigned me to a position on Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Mm.
So that's the beautiful island that sits off the coast of Washington State and right across the Strait of Juan de Fuca from Vancouver itself. So when I got the assignment, I learned that we had a problem up there. And that problem was we had Russian and Chinese intelligence collection vessels, or spy ships, tracking our ballistic missile submarines and our carrier battle groups coming out of the Pacific Northwest. Well, that's a problem. The problem had been ignored for years. Nobody was listening to the clarion call saying, hey, something's going on up here with the Russians and Chinese. Office of Naval Intelligence, you need to start paying attention. So long story short is I jumped on a Canadian helicopter one day with a specific mission of photographing one of these Russian ships. And during the flight, we learned hours later that they had fired a laser on us as we were making 360 circles around them. And, it was an act of war, bottom line. So, you've got a Russian spy ship firing a laser weapon on a Canadian helicopter in U.S. airspace with a U.S. intelligence officer on board. That boils down to a no kidding act of war. Well, it was handled very poorly by naval intelligence. It was handled very poorly by the Pentagon. It was handled very poorly by the White House. It was under the Clinton administration at the time. And the bottom line was, this never happened, make these guys go away. So in addition to the injuries that I sustained, as well as did the Canadian pilot I was flying with, we had to deal with a cover-up over the incident. Nobody was willing to admit that Russia had attacked North America, being in U.S. waters and firing on a Canadian helicopter in U.S. airspace. So that in and of itself was difficult to deal with. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So that was difficult to deal with. The 24/7, 365 pain that I've had to deal with for the last 27 plus years only exacerbated it. So, literally the Navy was adding insult to injury. And they tried to kick me out twice by passing me over for promotion. But a guy by the name of Jesse Helms stepped in, and he raised holy hell with then Secretary of Defense William Cohen. And the next thing I knew, a couple of weeks later, I'm getting promoted after a special review board was conducted. But the downside to the whole thing, short of North America being attacked, was that I was struggling emotionally and mentally. The physical part was there, but
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. So you said they fired a laser on you. Now, as a layperson who has never been in the military, you said I don't know what that means. Is that is that something like it's a gun, but it's made out of a laser? Like what?
No, what they did was they configured a running light on the port side of the vessel, and a running light is used. I call it a running light. That's Navy terminology. They're navigation lights.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever been out on a boat at night,
Sure.
depending upon what aspect of the boat you're looking at,
Is a
if
color,
you're
right?
if you're bow on, you got a white light right in the middle, and then you got a green and red light on either side, so you know
Gotcha.
which side of the ship or what side of the boat you're approaching on. So they had configured one of these navigation lights, particularly the port side. It was red, and it had a really unusual signature. So I had a U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer working for me, and he was the best imagery analyst in the entire Navy. I handpicked him, and he explained to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that he knew what he was talking about. Number one, when it came to lasers. Number two, how they affected a digital camera that I was using. And I guess the most important part was he insisted I go see a doctor as quickly as possible. And so that was based on his expertise with lasers and with digital cameras and their impact and how they would affect it.
Mm-hmm.
That he nailed it. He was spot on, pun intended, with this laser that I picked up in one of the photographs I took. Excuse me. So as I was mentioning, the dealing with this was extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew that the Navy was gunning for me, especially when the story broke in the press. I mean, about 5 weeks after the incident took place on April 4th of 97, on May 14th of 97, it appeared on the front page of a newspaper called the Washington Times out of D.C.
Oh, wow.
Their national security correspondent, Bill Gertz, broke the story. And it also coincided that day with Bill Clinton making an announcement from the Rose Garden that NATO and Russia had just signed this, peace agreement, for lack of a better term, or this cooperation agreement that they were going to work together. Well, we see how that's turned out,
Mm-hmm.
considering what's happening in Ukraine.
Right.
So it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Um, I spent a lot of time looking over my shoulder because it seemed like a month didn't go by, a week didn't go by where somebody wasn't questioning what had happened. And I went through security reviews that lasted 8 hours for an update for my security clearance. Most of the time I'd been through them before. They were maybe half an hour, an hour at most.
Mm-hmm.
They literally asked me every single question in the book because I read the book the night before. I read the guidelines the night before, and the guy sat there in front of my lawyers and asked me every question. Sometimes multiple, they repeated it multiple
Iteration. Mm-hmm.
times. So, um, you know, I had to find a coping mechanism to, number one, to deal with the constant pain. Sometimes it's mind numbing still to this day, 27 years later. I think I'm the best weather guesser there is in the United States because I know when a storm's coming.
Wow.
Last week, Debbie wreaked havoc on my eyes with all the nonsense that was associated with that hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
And now we got Hurricane Ernesto that's going to come up the East Coast. Luckily, it looks like it's going to stay out to sea. And a guy asked me, an office mate, when one of these security people showed up unannounced, and I told the guy, I'm not talking to you. And I told you yesterday, my lawyer had to be present, and my commanding officer had to be present. And I said, you just show up. I said, you can find your way back out of the building. And the guy waddled. He literally waddled away. And I started cracking up. And my office mate, who sat a couple of feet away from me, goes, Jack, how do you do it, man? Kevin, do what? He goes, how do you keep a sense of humor with all this BS you've been going through? And I said, Kevin, if I don't laugh I'm going to cry, and that's just going to make my eyes hurt even worse. So I rather laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that was my go-to
Mm-hmm.
for coping with not only the pain, but also the nonsense. And I guess my impetus for writing Laugh Out Loud was a news report one day on Fox News back in 2020. I was driving to work, and they reported a statistic from the year 2019 that in 2019 there were 498 active duty service member suicides, which was absolutely shocking. There were 198 family members, spouses, and dependent suicides. But the one that was really just kind of, I'm still getting chills by it. There were almost 6,500 veteran suicides in 1 year. In one year. And I couldn't believe my ears.
Right.
And it was on my mind all day long. I got home, had dinner, and my wife heard the same report after we sat down from dinner. She goes, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't know. I have no idea." But I knew I had a good friend that I served with, and I knew he was struggling with demons. He had done a couple of tours in Iraq as a DoD contractor. And had some real demons that he was struggling with. And I thought, geez, if I could do something just to help him, whatever I need to do, it's worth the effort. And my wife asked me, well, what did you do to deal with all the nonsense after the laser attack? And I said, I laughed. I had to find something to laugh about,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was really funny or whether it was just stupid funny. It didn't matter. Um, dad jokes. I get a kick out of dad jokes.
I know.
Um,
Isn't it crazy how we just kind of mature into that?
it
I
is
don't know when
funny.
it happened when I went from actually being funny to just being funny to me. But
Exactly.
I've gotten way funnier to me, and I've gotten way less funny to others.
So I said, okay, what in the world could I do with laughter? I said, I'm not going to be a stand-up comic. Now I'm at the age where I'm telling granddad jokes, so I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel till my fingernails have rust under them. And I thought, okay, I was following a practice, a daily ritual every morning called Savers, Savers. It's a daily practice written by a guy by the name of Hal Elrod, young guy who had some near death experiences. And he wrote this book. So I said, okay, well, why don't I do something similar? I'll take the word laugh and the letters of the word and turn it into a mnemonic. So, for instance, the word L stands for laugh. Find something to laugh about. The word A or the letter A stands for act. Get off the sofa, get out of the Barco lounger, go, take a hike, take a walk, go to the gym, whatever you need to do, but
Mhm.
get your blood flowing, get your mind cleared. And then the letter U stands for unplug. Put the devices down, put the
Mhm.
Android down, put the Apple down, go take a look outside and see what it's doing. Look at the blue sky for a change instead of having your face buried in your device.
Mhm.
And then G stands for grow. Learn something new. Maybe you wanted to learn how to do macrame as a kid, but you never got around to it. So give it a shot. Learn how to do woodworking. Learn how to weld or do plumbing. Something, but train your brain is the bottom line with that. And
Mhm.
then H stands for humor, me or us. Make somebody else laugh
Mhm.
because that's the highest form of laughter is to be able to make somebody else laugh.
Sure.
So I came up with that, and those were my five key words based on the letters of the word laugh. And then I had to write it out to say, okay, here's what you can do or what you can't
Explain each.
do.
Yeah, yeah.
Explain
Explain
each.
each one. I love that, man, because it follows along with a lot of the things that I talk about as well. It's a holistic approach where we've got to get
Mhm.
our body and mind and spirit kind of all in line and healing and growing. For if we're not growing, then we're dying in that area.
Yes.
And it can be finite, and there's parts of us that are finitely dying. But it can be also when we get into one of these big ones like physical health, where we're eating a bunch of processed foods, we're not getting
Mhm.
off the couch, or we're so plugged in that we're not doing the things we need to do. and it is straight to our detriment mentally. We can't figure out why we're depressed and why we're so anxious all the daggum time,
Mm.
and it's because of those things. And I've that is something I say a lot. Just get up and walk, change your diet. Like it,
Yeah.
you'll see a major shift in life if just doing those two things. So
Oh,
I
and
love,
your mindset too.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah. You need to break down, getting a perspective and gratitude and staying and present and all that. So, did you work through where did you come upon these tools? Is that just some stuff you have always done? I know you said that you laughed, of course, but talking about getting physiology involved, getting out in nature. That's another thing I'd talk about. You get out in nature, how healing that is. Where did that really happen? Is that kind of post the after you retired, or that was
yes,
something?
primarily after I retired.
Yeah.
I retired in 2003, and I've had a variety of jobs. The focus of my uh, post naval career has been on business continuity planning or in the federal government continuity of operations planning. So I knew from being in a really sedentary position all day long after I retired. I mean, I've spent more time in a chair in the 20 years I've since retiring than I ever did during the 20 years I was in the Navy because always moving around. And the Savers routine that I was practicing had for the letter E in the word saver exercise.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I actually got into yoga.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was very good at it, but
Who
I
cares?
tried to do it every day. And I found that was keeping my mind a little sharper.
Yeah.
You know, and I had read articles about what happens to some folks when they retire, they become sedentary.
Hmm.
And they get into some, just planted in front of the TV, and it's very detrimental to their health. It's
Hmm.
detrimental to their psyche.
And
And one of
lifespan.
the yeah, yeah. One of the great things about laughter is the fact that it's been medically proven to be beneficial to a person's not only psyche but to their physical health. There is when you laugh, your body releases neuropeptides. Uh, your brain releases neuropeptides, and those are beneficial to you physically as well as emotionally. There have been cases where they have found where these neuropeptides can help fight cancer,
Hmm.
the common cold, other diseases. I'm not so sure about COVID. I haven't seen the details on that yet. I think
They're
that's
still
TBD.
testing the medicines that they made us take. They hadn't gotten to that
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, that's
So
TBD.
do you suggest first? I didn't say this. Thank you for your service, Jack.
Uh,
I mean to say it all the
my
time.
pleasure.
I was raised right, and any man that put on the uniform or woman needs the thanks that they deserve. So, how do you suggest one? Can they manufacture a laugh? Does our brain know the difference when we're meaning when it's so? If you told me a joke that I found really funny, and I know crap belly laughed,
Yeah,
uh, that's one thing. And
right.
then is it different than me just kind of forcing myself into a laugh, or does our brain kind of dump the same chemical either way? How do you teach on that?
Yeah, the probably the easiest way, and you don't necessarily have to laugh. Smile. Go in front of a mirror and smile. Smile at
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
It might crack you up, but that's probably the easiest way to get that process started. Back when AT&T used to be called Ma Bell, I'm really dating myself here now. They trained their telephone operators to smile. So they had a mirror at their station, and they were told every time they answered a call to look at themselves and smile in that mirror when they answered the call because they would come across more pleasant. So
Mm,
that's a really bare bones, easy way to get some of those neuropeptides
okay.
flowing.
Yeah.
If you force yourself to laugh without having something to laugh about, it's fake. So you're kind of doing yourself a little bit of a disservice by
Okay.
forcing yourself to laugh at nothing, really. it doesn't really do you all that good. You're actually probably doing yourself a little bit of a detriment.
Yeah, I just know some people think I react differently than you, Jack. You know what I mean? Like when I'm in a bad situation and see the guy wobbling off, I see a dart going into the back of his head.
Yeah.
Not-
Well, I was thinking that too.
yeah, and I get it. I love to laugh too. I know that's been part of my healing as well. And there was a time when I didn't think I would laugh again.
Yeah.
Soon after my son died, I couldn't enjoy anything. I talk about not enjoying football anymore because I love football so much. I graduated from the University of Alabama,
Okay.
and that's kind of what they teach us down there. And so I love football. And after he passed, I couldn't even enjoy a game of football. And I said, man, I am in deep shit here. Like, if I can't enjoy football, what can I ever enjoy?
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, after all these years, I've been able to do a bunch of work and get to a point where I do laugh. I mean, we've laughed several times just on the call here today, and I'm so thankful that I've gotten to that point. But there's so much work. There's a big gap that, between here and there. So, folks that are struggling, I get it, and you can get there. And even if you don't think you'll laugh, you will again. And as you do it, it kind of grows on itself.
It does.
And you're able to take, Jack, I think when we can take ourselves a little less seriously and we can focus on what's truly important in life and really treat that more seriously, then we can lighten the load, and it is a little easier to laugh. And I think that's probably a lot of the science that goes with your techniques and helping people. Because if you can get to that point, then you've probably gotten yourself to some healthy spaces. So anyway, on to the next one. So we all have a history. Shame and guilt can be overwhelming at times. So what do you do to stay on point and not fall prey to negative emotions?
I'm not very good at it. I'll admit that right up front. Mm-hmm. The rear view mirror syndrome mm-hmm. Is something that I'm guilty of. Mm-hmm. I'd like to say not on a daily basis, but I think I might be. I look at the past and I don't dwell on things necessarily, but they'll resurface. I'll allow them to resurface. I have to be very cognizant not to do that, because that'll drag you down in a heartbeat, especially if you're thinking about something negative.
Sure.
So if I'm headed down that road, I try to think about something positive that made me laugh. As I mentioned in the book, there's a couple anecdotes in there from when my children were younger. For instance, my first daughter, she was maybe, I don't know, 2.5, 3 months old. I had her propped up on my thighs, my feet up on the coffee table, and I was playing with her chubby little arms and those sausage thighs, and the TV was on, and somebody blurted out on the television, "Reach for the sky." So I thought, okay, let me try this. So I cocked my hand like a pistol and I pointed at her and I said, "Reach for the sky." And she broke into this belly laugh that had me laughing so hard my sides were splitting. And I tried it again, "Reach for the sky," and she continued with the belly laugh. And I was just enamored with her. That was the funniest thing I had ever heard in my life. It was music to my ears. And then she just stopped, like somebody pulled the plug, and just kept staring at the ceiling and everything else around her, like she had been before I said that. So I try to think of those memories to get me out of the rearview mirror syndrome and back on track. And it makes me laugh. I still laugh about it today.
Sure.
And it's a fond memory, And my little girl, who is grown and has a child of her own now, and it's a great memory to be able to think about something that your child did that made you laugh, and to remember that to keep your sanity in line.
Yeah, and I see you're using it as a reset to get you back to present.
Yes.
So often negative emotions are, like you say, you're in the rear view, or you're anxious about something, worried about something coming up in the future. And, we just got to do our best, make sure we're prepared, and then we can check those off, get back to present. And I like your reset button, good laughter, good moment in life to reflect on. So on to something that, Jack, we really deal with a lot, and kind of the basis of this podcast is trying to get men okay with the idea of dealing with mental health. We're human beings, and so we're going to have mental health issues. There's things in our society that have changed. They're not the same as they used to be. And something that really hasn't changed a lot is men discussing their own emotional health, how they feel, and things like that. And I know that in my past, I was the same way. He
Mhm.
asked me how I feel. There was two ways. I was either angry or not angry, and um, that's not a healthy way to live. And I've learned that, and I've also learned about the stigmas that go with men talking about mental health. You know, that you're a sissy or a wuss if you're talking about those things. You just need to suck it up and keep going and all. And that whole burnt out, worn out, no good philosophy is still out there kind of weighing on us, man. So as a veteran, an officer in the Navy, and how did you get past the stigma that goes with men and mental health? And then what do you say to those who are kind of keeping that alive, or those who ignore their mental health because they're worried they're not a quote unquote man, or they're not tough or whatever if they were to deal with mental health? And I understand, you know, I can't imagine. I've had some people pissed off at me. I've pissed off quite a few people in life, but I've never had the United States Navy after me. So I can only imagine that the press and stress that comes with that, like that's huge. And I can only imagine. So, you know, anxiety must have been something that just was really ever present with you. So, you know, I can see in your situation, this was kind of even inflamed because you had the whole United States Navy after you. So what do you say to that? When I say that to you, how do you feel about that? And then how did you, as a somebody who may be just a hair my senior, is how have you, you know, because you're kind of the generation right before mine, not maybe, and so it was even tougher on you guys.
I didn't blame the United States Navy writ large. Um, it was there were a couple handfuls of idiots that I crossed paths with that had agendas of their own. There was someone, to this day, I don't know who. There was someone that was saying, as was conveyed to me or revealed to me, um, that wanted this whole thing swept under the rug, quote unquote. And I don't know who that was to this day. I think it was coming out of the White House. I think it was probably Bill Clinton, but I have no solid proof of that. That's
Mm-hmm.
conjecture on my part.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, as I said earlier, it was extremely difficult to deal with, and I kept silent for probably at least a year. And the corner that I turned to be able to talk about it was actually talking to reporters. So the first person I spoke to about the incident and what I was dealing with was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Michael Waller. He's a PhD, and he wrote an article for Reader's Digest, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the national security realm. He was a Russia expert. Um, he had he had fought down in Nicaragua
Mm-hmm.
against the Sandinistas back in the day, and he was just generally just a great individual, super guy, but knew the Russians far better than I did because he had studied them for so long and had written a couple of books about them. So I guess Mike was probably the first person who I shared any of the struggle with that I was dealing with emotionally and mentally, and that helped. So based on that uh, undertaking, I decided to write a second book, and it was actually my first book that I've probably been writing for the last 25 years, and it's called Blind Treason. It goes into all the details about the attack and my career, you know, prior to and the aftermath of the attack. Even though it's been covered in a couple of other books by other people, they haven't told the complete story. They haven't told the emotional side of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for instance, one of the chapters is titled "You Get Zero." So the VA has given me not a penny for my the wounds that I incurred on active duty to my eyes. They gave me a 0 rating, which means that they're acknowledging it, but they're not giving me any compensation for it.
Because they don't acknowledge the event.
They don't acknowledge the event. As a matter of fact, it was the Department of Defense Inspector General did an investigation and filed a report recommending that I was eligible for a Purple Heart as a result of the incident. But the Navy said no. And the reason they said no was because if we give Jack Daly a Purple Heart, that's us acknowledging that the attack actually took place, and we're not going to do that.
Right.
So, and I'm probably one of hundreds, if maybe not thousands, who have dealt with something like that, the services are never going to acknowledge it. Well, I know the Army did it because a couple of years after we were shot with the laser, an Army Black Hawk crew was flying over Bosnia at night, and they got lit up by a laser, by somebody on the ground. Army never acknowledged that. I mean, it ended a pilot's flying career. The Canadian pilot I was flying with, it ended his career.
Wow. Did Canada not recognize it either?
Canada did not recognize it either. No.
Wow.
Now, they did, their VA system did recognize that he had some injuries, so he does receive some small compensation. But it ended his career, and he was just about to retire to go into a very lucrative civilian flying career, and that all came to a screeching halt. I guess, it was frowned upon, and as you alluded to, Aaron, men don't talk about their feelings. They keep them bottled up, and that's the worst thing they could do. I guess if I could caveat it, don't suffer in silence. Don't do that to yourself. There are people that exist in the world that are there to help you, if not just to be an ear, lend an ear. Get your issue out, get your story out. Even if they can't do anything about it, it will be helpful to you to talk to somebody, to express it. If you break down crying like a baby in a process, so what?
Right. It'll feel great.
So what?
It'll feel great, I promise.
It'll feel great. I mean, I sat at my desk one day at home a couple of years after the incident, probably a year after the incident happened, and I pounded my thighs with my fists till they were black and blue the next day because I was so damn mad about the way things were playing out for me that I didn't understand it. And I was yelling at God, why? Why me? And, what did I do to deserve this? Having no idea that this was going to be a lifelong, malady for me. And the answer came a couple of days later, and it had nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me at all. The pilot that I was flying with, we went through so much BS that we were accused of doing this to ourselves. And the doctors and scientists that examined us down in San Antonio said, well, let's each you guys go and get an MRI. Damn if his MRI didn't reveal a mass in his brain about the size of a baseball.
Oh, my God.
That was ready to blow. And it would have killed him instantly. And I thought about that after I heard the news. I wasn't supposed to hear that news. I heard it by accident. I just happened to be sitting outside his doctor's office when he got the call with the results of this MRI. And I thought, this has got nothing to do with me. This is about Pat. And as I thought about it longer, I thought, he could be flying that helicopter over a school full of little kids. That thing blows in his brain. He drops dead on the spot and drops on that school full of little kids and takes out little kids.
Yeah.
So it was a peaceful revelation for me. That pounding my thighs and yelling at God at the top of my lungs, it revealed itself, believe it or not. And when I realized this ain't about me, that was my, I guess my shining moment
Yeah. What
of,
your perspective shifted.
oh,
And,
absolutely.
and once your perspective shifts, then you see the world in a whole new light. And then we begin to see the answers for the questions that we once had that we wouldn't,
Yeah,
that were sitting right there, but because we had a fouled up perspective on things. Well, I say fouled up, we just had the wrong perspective. If you're looking for positive and you have a negative perspective, you're not going to find the positive.
right.
And if you're looking for negative and you have a positive perspective, you're going to have a hard time finding it.
That's
It
true.
usually doesn't go that way. But I really appreciate you sharing really everything with us. And I can only imagine how hard that entire situation was. And I'm glad you made it through it, and I'm glad you're helping veterans. I can't imagine 6,500. I did not know the number of 6,500, but I know that men's suicides in the country are up staggeringly high. And that is men suffering in silence. That is men
Yes.
who are acting like everything is okay, and then they just can't take it anymore because it's building up inside them. We got to let it out. We got to release it. That's why I
Yeah.
was saying, when we cry or when we laugh, when we let this stuff out of our bodies, we really, really do heal some, and we let some pressure off. We
Hmm.
know when pressure's building in a balloon or a tire or something, we go, oh shit, that's going to blow. We got to let some pressure off. The same thing deals with is happening inside of our bodies, and we got to let it off, or it's going to come out in a negative way, physically or emotionally. Somehow it's going to come out. So, anyway, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to be sharing a link to your book on Amazon, so that people can
Thank
reach
you.
your book there on Amazon in the description for this episode. But I'd also like for you to share with us anything else. If you've got Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera, any of those you want to share a handle, or anything else that you have going on currently or coming up in the near future that you would like for all of us to know about.
Sure. I guess the best site I could recommend people go to is www.jackdalyauthor, and that's all one word. So JackDalyauthor.com. And you can find a link not only to Laugh Out Loud, but I'm putting in periodic updates on my second book, Blind Treason. So people can
Great.
keep an eye open for that as well.
Yeah, it's great, Jack. And I'll get off the site. You can email it to me, and I'll make sure that makes it in the description here as well, so that people
Okay,
can
fantastic.
get to that. Yeah, and thank everybody so much for listening, giving us your time. It's your most valuable asset. Hope we added some value to your day. And until next time, I hope you have a great day.